Dr. Shawn Tassone, welcome to Women's Wellness Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you here. We're going to dig into hormones today, which is a topic our audience always wants to know more about. So your background, you've been an OB/GYN, we were just figuring out for almost 20 years,
Yep.
but your style has evolved. So I wonder if you can talk about maybe what first drew you to the field and then how you've matured over the years as a practitioner.
How have I evolved as a human being, right? Which hopefully we all do. I think I'm an only child. That's why I'm so attention starved, I guess. I just, for some reason, always knew that I wanted to go into medicine. I think there was a part of me that, you have that desire to help, but I think partly too, and I truly believe this, that those of us that do this kind of stuff, we're trying to heal our own maybe wounds as well, whether we realize it or not. And what's interesting is I was pretty dyed in the wool standard, OB/GYN, pretty Western oriented, I would say. Didn't even really think about other stuff until probably about 2001, 2002, which was about 5 years after I got out, three to 4 years after I got out, because my mom had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was a second-year resident. And she had it for a few years, and then she kind of got to the end. And it was when I was doing that hospice part in the hospital. It was just me sitting there most of the time. And when she finally passed away, I remember thinking, this body that I'm looking at, that's not my mother, right? I mean, it's her body, but that's not what made her her. And so I kind of went on my own spiritual kind of quest because it really kind of shakes you, when something like that happens. And I found it was interesting. I was in Sedona, of all places, magical Sedona. And my wife was getting a massage, and I was reading a book in the library that Andrew Weil had written, I think, 8 Weeks to Optimal Health. And, this was 15 years ago, 16 years ago, whatever. So he's talking about like CoQ10 and all these other crazy things that I was like, what is this stuff, And so at the back of the book, there was this section where you could apply for his fellowship at the University of Arizona. And since I was living in Tucson, I was like, wow, that would be pretty cool. So I applied, got in, and graduated from there in 2005. And it was in that 2-year window that we had an 8-week section on spirituality and healing help in health. And that really resonated with me. And I think, that sent me on some crazy adventures to Brazil and Peru. And I really got into like Caroline Myss and archetypes and, energetic aspects of things, and still kind of maintained a foot in the Western medicine. It's funny because I do all the, what I call woo-woo stuff. And then also I operate robotic surgery. So I'm kind of at both extremes, which may be bipolar, I'm not sure. But I think, there's a place for everything like that.
Yeah, I love it so much when I see people who are traditionally trained as physicians, which is so much work. It's so rigorous. And then to explore these other parts of yourself, it's amazing. I have to comment. One, I love that, like, when you're just, spacing out at a spa, you find the book, which is often, how we find things that are new to us. We're out of our element and we're like, oh, let me just look at this book.
Yeah, no, I honestly think that when you're detached like that, when you are not, and that was back when cell phones weren't as big a deal as they are now. I mean, now I'd probably be sitting there on my phone. So luckily I wasn't. And I just happened to be sitting, and my wife's massage ran over. And so I had this time and I was just reading this. And like I said, it was like really a profound thought process. Like, you can use herbs. And I mean, obviously people knew this stuff. I just never really thought of it that way. And, why am I sitting here today? I mean, we were together this weekend, and I think you meet people, for reasons unknown, and you bump into people and your direction changes. And for me, I'm just happy that I was able to recognize it when it happened, like
To
didn't just pick
seize
up the
it.
book and go, oh, I could never get in, or, oh, is that for me? I just did it. I didn't even like think about it. I just did it.
Yeah, I love also that it was like in the back of the book because nowadays everything's online and
Yeah.
like that's how I applied for Chinese medicine school too. I was like, I gotta get out some books to find a Chinese medicine
Yeah.
school. Then I gotta apply with like by paper and phone and
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know. It's just kind of
Typewriter. I remember applying for medical school residencies with a typewriter. That's how old I am.
yeah, things have just changed so fast. So yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm glad you did the training. And yeah, Dr. Weil has gotten so well known since
Mhm.
then. So really interesting. So you started studying the spirituality and what else were you applying in your practice? And what was your practice like day to day? Who were you seeing?
Well, even today, I mean, my practice now, I always have taken insurance. And I think one of the things that I really like about what I do is that I think integrative medicine and stuff should be available to everybody.
Mm,
But most of the practitioners, for obvious reasons, have to charge cash because you don't get paid by time with insurance, you get paid by diagnosis. And so I've jokingly integrated integrative medicine into my practice by just kind of setting up rooms and stuff to remind me to think in other ways. Like in one of my exam rooms, I have a tapestry with the chakras on it, just to make me think like, okay, if there's pelvic pain, maybe it has something to do with other aspects like money or relationships or whatever. There's
mm,
other things to think of, and or art, some other types of art, or I get crazy bohemian, maybe put a salt rock in there or something, I mean, just little things that jog my memory. And now, because I do a ton of hormones, for the last 10 years, I really incorporate a lot of things like hops, for sleep, or, other herbal, like maca. And I've really kind of dove deep into the alternative stuff, like, acupuncture. I don't do it, but I mean, I've built a network of those people around me that I can refer
mm.
to. And that's really what I think is important, is it, as the physician, not feeling like I have to know everything, but having people to refer to, that are in town that handle gut or whatever it is that I'm, needing. And they can refer to me for hormones or whatever they don't feel comfortable with.
Mm. And where do you practice now?
I'm in Austin.
Okay. And do you see people on Skype or anything, or
I
how they have
just
to come to your
started. Texas
practice?
just changed their telemedicine laws the last
Ah,
month to, it used to be you couldn't unless you had a physical encounter with the patient, and they actually just changed that. So for the last month on Mondays, I have been doing telemedicine visits. Yeah. And I
oh wow,
bill
good for
insurance.
Texas.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow, that's really progressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's fun because you get to sit in your house, and but at the same time you get to reach people that you normally would have had no chance of meeting.
No, yeah. So amazing. Yeah, you
And I
get to
can
kind
order
of.
the labs, and I can, through their insurance. I mean, pretty much everything's just like it would be if they came to the office.
Cool. Okay, so you're doing kind of this, looking at the emotional level, looking at herbs, and I know you do some. Yeah, you mentioned lab testing, and you do some bioidentical hormones. Tell us about that piece of it.
The bioidentical hormones.
Yeah, and maybe how you prescribe them. Is it always based on labs?
Well, first visit, yes. And the three ways that you can test hormones, one being saliva, the next blood, and then urine. Saliva for me, I don't use because it's good for cortisol levels, but I don't use it for the other hormone levels. I just never have. Blood is very accurate, but it's only accurate the second that the needle's in your arm. But insurance covers it most of the time. And then the 24-hour urine, the new Dutch screen that's available, is probably my favorite. And initially, when you could probably, I think we were talking earlier, I do have a quiz coming online in about 2 weeks. It's whatsyourhormonetype.com. And it's 36 questions, and it's going to give you one of 12 hormonal archetypes, and it's based on symptoms. But I also do these hormonal archetypes based on labs, which would be a tiny bit more accurate. But I think you can do it based on symptoms. So what I tend to do is labs if they're in the office. And if they're in the office, then basically what I try to do, to me, it's all about balance, and it's not about normal or abnormal. I think so many women come in and they say, I have been miserable for a year. I've had labs done 3 times and the doctors always tell me the labs are normal. Well, what does that even mean? I mean, normal is not normal for everybody. I mean, it's such a range, right? So like testosterone, 0.2 to 2.0 is normal. Most women are 0.2. Well, I could multiply that tenfold and you'd still be normal, but you might feel a lot better. So it's really relative. I use the symptoms a lot rather than the hormone values to assess how well somebody's responding to treatment. But initially, if they're in the office, I'll do blood or urine. But yeah, the online thing is going to be really cool because you'll be able to, through those 36 questions, I can tell you if you're estrogen dominant, estrogen deficient, progesterone deficient, cortisol, thyroid. You know, it's just one of those symptoms things. And then this whole concept of archetypes, like estrogen dominance, I call those women the queen. That's the archetype. And so the queen will go through a spiritual practice, hormonal modulation. I have like essential oils and things like acupuncture.
Oh, cool.
Nutrition, exercise, and supplementation. So each of those archetypes has a 6-step process to help maintain balance.
And do they all start with the same step or depends?
Well, the nice thing I call it the SHINES method, the acronym for those 6 steps. And the nice thing about it is only one of those steps do you need a prescription usually, and that's the hormone. So you can try the other 5 things on your own. And I'm kind of a person who likes to try maybe one thing at a time to see if it works. Because if you try all 5 or 6, you don't know which one's working, you know? So sometimes, you know, and, you know, unfortunately, you see this too. People don't want to necessarily spend the time to fix their diet, which would probably be the best thing, but it's going to take a little bit longer than the immediate punch of, say, a hormone or even like supplements that might give you something very quickly, or a spiritual practice, which is going to take some time and take some effort. And so it would be interesting to see what people gravitate towards. But I have a feeling supplements are going to be something that people want to try, and maybe even like the essential oils, which are, you know, an instant kind of thing rather than waiting.
Yeah, I love essential oils. I'm glad you're adding those in. So, okay, tell me acronym stands for again.
So SHINES is spiritual practice, hormonal modulation, infoceuticals, which is, I kind of group in the energetic things like aromatherapies and acupuncture and even Harry Massey's energetic integrators, nutrition, exercise, and supplementation.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I heard you over this past weekend. We've kind of alluded to, we have a mutual business coach. So we were together this past week, and I heard you talk about infoceuticals. I kind of perked up because I've been taking them for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and not a lot of people use the Ness brand infoceuticals. So, you know, we've barely ever talked about it on the show. So I wondered if you'd be willing to talk about them a bit and why you're going forward with them.
Well, I guess, you know, just to be complete, I honestly believe that the energetic or the emotional mind part at times is something that's really missed. And you, being an acupuncturist, understand the energy probably better than I do. But Harry Massey's NES stuff is like, it kind of like blows the lid off of my head when I try to understand it. But it makes sense that if a woman has estrogen dominance, that it could also be some sort of a blockage in the energetic aspects of her body, her mind connection, that maybe is causing causing the ovaries to not function properly, or her insulin to not function properly. And so there's going to be those women out there in the world that are open to that. There's probably going to be some people that think it's crazy, but I wanted to put it in there for completeness because I've done level 1 healing touch training, and I have had Reiki done and craniosacral and stuff, and have had some personal experiences. I haven't tried the infoceuticals myself, but I've done, like I said, Brazil, I've worked with shamans, and I've had a lot of profound experiences based on just energy. And so, but the hard thing is just putting it into words and explaining it in a way that people understand, you know?
Yeah, it's I'll try to sum it up a bit, but it's very hard. So the infoceuticals are basically information imprinted on structured water, and the information is kind of telling your body how to work and its ideal function. So the Nest system, and I'll share the link to this, does a scan via computer of your body systems, kind of various organ systems and energetic systems, a lot of systems based on Chinese medicine and other studies. And then from there, it gives you a report, and you can choose these, they call them infoceuticals, to use. So there's just these little kind of like saltwater drops you use. Hard to explain, but I have had some good results with them. And yeah, I certainly believe that energy affects the physical, and probably you have the experience and I have as well. I think sometimes women are having a real, existential crisis with their relationship or their work or aging. And they come in and say, well, I'm having a hormone problem. And they are, but what they're seeking on another level is just some help and community around how they're hurting emotionally and energetically, right?
Yeah, and actually, interestingly that you say that, because one of the aspects that I put in the Queen say is the spiritual practice part of that is, what does a queen have to do to help improve her life? Well, she has to surround herself with good advisors, right? Like strong people that she can rely on and get help with, because part of the aspect of being that estrogen dominant energy is that you do everything yourself, kind of an attitude, and you're going to burn yourself out. And so by tapping into that, the power of other people and surrounding yourself with good energy, you can help kind of balance things out a little bit. And it's somewhat metaphorical, but at the same time, I think that that's the fun that I have with archetypes, is that they do kind of, connotate this energetic aspect of things. And like you said, especially things like decreased libido. Yeah, I can fix your testosterone level, but the decreased libido part is going to be very, tied up in relationships and body image and so many other things that aren't going to be hormonal, right? And so that's where I think that the infoceuticals can come in.
Yeah, I love that message around supporting yourself or surrounding yourself with supportive people. I think it's so great. And sometimes when I think of like all the many things I do to support myself, it's like ridiculous. But I'm like, no, I need all these things. I need all these things in place.
Yeah.
And I'm going to riff for a second, because I saw this twice on Facebook today, and it kind of bugs me. The message to women, well, you have to help yourself first so you can help others. And I'm just like, why can't you just help yourself first to help yourself?
Right.
Why can't it just be about you for a change? And maybe that's like a segue, like, okay, yeah, women are always trying to help other people, but okay, help yourself first to help them. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of just a tenet of what I believe is, like, we as women are powerful people. We're not just caretakers of everybody else. So that's something we do, and it's wonderful. And in a way, maybe the powerful things we do are take care of other people really well. But I love the idea of just washing yourself in support and care just for yourself. That's the only reason.
Well, if you think about balance in general, I mean, you can talk about hormonal balance, but if you're not balanced in the other areas of your life, which is going to include not just doing for other people and actually, taking care of, yourself, whether, you're getting a massage or exercising, whatever it is that you need to do to get yourself right. Because really, one of my archetypes is the cortisol insufficiency. I call that one the saboteur. And the saboteur is that classic person that does so much for everybody else, kids, husband, work, that they have literally fried themselves. And so that's the other extreme. If you don't take care of yourself, you're going to be run down, not healthy, eating poorly, probably, weight gain, and then the emotional side of all that. So right, you've got to add personal things to your life, or you're not going to be balanced at all.
Yeah. And I can get, like, you have a child or two. I don't know how many.
I have 4.
You have 4. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you really know. I mean, I can get that, especially as moms, like, you go into this hyperdrive of caring for others with small kids, and sometimes you're still working, and it's a lot. But really, it is also just a phase of your life. Like, it can't be your forever identity to be wiping kids' noses. Like,
Yeah.
eventually they'll grow up. So yeah, just like maintaining that part of yourself that isn't just a caretaker, but also, and it doesn't have to be hours a day you spend on it, but maybe you spend, 10 minutes a day just reading for pleasure on, or whatever it is, just little bits of
Well,
things you
not
can
as
do for yourself.
obviously a woman, but as a human being, I just turned 50 yesterday. And so I have spent some time reflecting, and I I have probably in just this last year realized how poorly I have been taking care of myself. You know, just
Wow.
even whether or not it's self-deprecation, or thinking you're not good enough, or not eating right, not exercise, whatever it is. I just realized, and maybe for the past 2 months I've really tried to change that. And so that, I think, is probably good for everybody to really, because I was neglecting myself, and I take care of people all the time too, and not just at home but at work, and it just doesn't make sense. I was constantly feeling like a hypocrite, because here I am telling other people what to do that I'm not even doing myself. And I think that a lot of us are guilty of that. And I'm glad I didn't wait until I was 70 to figure that out.
Yeah, you still have time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's true. We can do that as practitioners. And, I don't want people to do what I did either, which is kind of wait till like a health crisis to realize you need to take care of yourself, which is often what we do.
Yeah.
We often, and it's, maybe again, that mind body thing, like the mind or the spiritual side is like, hey, we got to slow this person down because this isn't working. And then you get sick, and then you really need to ask for help. So I guess it can be a mixed blessing, but the sooner we can catch it, the better, right?
Yeah. It's that wounded, like I said, it's that wounded healer archetype where, like the doctor who I've looked at a bunch of friends, and, one who he went into endocrinology and he was a childhood diabetic, or the guy who had epilepsy that went into neurology. I mean, it's like you tend to maybe gravitate towards those things in your life that you're trying to heal on your own. And it's not just physicians, but in life in general. I think we tend to try to maybe subconsciously correct some of the things in our lives that maybe were traumatic or whatever, and yet we don't really even realize we're doing it. And that's a method of self-care, right? It's like, that's kind of what my book is going to be about, is with this Shines protocol, is how can you take care of self-care. Self-care to me is what should be coming in the next wave of medicine. It should be where the doctor, instead of being an active participant, is a passive participant, and the patient, instead of being passive, is active. And I think there's some people that are that way, but I think it would be much better if the model was just reversed and patients took responsibility and knew what to do, and then used the medications kind of as a last resort, or surgery or whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of our colleagues said, if your doctor isn't leading with diet and lifestyle, you need a different doctor, because it's so true. It's so foundational. And frankly, it was what became very frustrating in my acupuncture practice. I studied Chinese medicine as a young person, and in this country, it's mostly acupuncture, even though it's a big system of medicine. And where I really enjoyed my clients, they were basically coming to lay down and receive something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is lovely for them. But the more I study nutrition and functional medicine, I was like, I want people to be more active. And there was really kind of no way to shift that paradigm without really shifting what I was offering, because if you keep offering the same thing, you're going to keep getting
Yeah.
the same response. So I'm curious, what hormonal type is the wounded healer? What does that go with?
Well, that is not a hormonal archetype in
Oh,
my
gotcha.
book.
Okay.
I think that, it's interesting. Wounded healer archetypes, if you look at any person that's taking care of another individual, that's where I think the wounded healer comes out. But even students, there's a book actually written called The Wounded Researcher, where a guy did a study on PhD students and found that the dissertations were were also related to wounds, like childhood wounds. They would gravitate towards a dissertation project that was very centered around their traumas, and they didn't even realize it. So, it's interesting to think, like, that question you just asked is maybe, digging deeper on these archetypes for hormone imbalance might find some other sort of wounds or something. Like, I do believe that in the, like, let's say the Queen, where I talk about the practice of surrounding yourself with good people, maybe one of those wounds is, abandonment or issues, or not trusting others because you were dissed or something happened to you in your earlier life. So yeah, I think there's definitely wounds in there that kind of come out in various ways and maybe affect even your hormones.
I think so. I mean, what drives us to our imbalance is usually childhood things. And even if we had a relatively good childhood, I think it still is what drives us
I've
to our
discovered that
imbalance.
parenting, and this is a joke, but parenting, the whole goal is to just not give your kids your stuff, like, because I can see my parents' stuff in myself. Like, it just comes back out, whether the divorce or whatever it was, and trying not to put your own pathologies. If your kids can grow up without your pathologies inside of them, I think that was a successful thing.
I think you're
I
right.
used to think if they could get out of high school without taking drugs or being pregnant, that would be successful. But now I think it's just, if you cannot instill them with your own stuff, then you're probably doing a good job.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And yeah, I think it's part of our life journey, as you express with your journey. And, with all these types, is like, as we evolve and learn about ourselves, hopefully we change some of our automatic patterns and be more aware. And yeah, and does this circle back to the hormones? Absolutely. Because when we're overdoing it or frustrated or whatever, it's going to affect our hormone levels. So yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, and the point that you just made that was excellent, is that nothing happens, and I do mention this in the book, nothing happens in a vacuum. So it's not just hormones, right? I mean, the woman that comes in to see me, that comes in because she doesn't have a sex drive, the first question I ask her is, are you coming in because you think you have a problem or because he thinks you have a problem? And 99% of the time, the woman doesn't think she has a problem. She's just being told that she has a problem, or, she doesn't feel good because she's gained 30 pounds. There's usually some other connection there, mentally or psychologically, energetically, that's adding to that. So it's not just, oh, my testosterone's low. There's more there. And if we just prescribe a medication, I just don't think it's going to have the same impact,
Yeah. Yeah. And you just turned 50 and you're reflecting. I'm also a Virgo. I just turned 43 reflecting.
Virgos are awesome.
Virgos are awesome wounded healers. Yeah. I mean, also, I think aging is a big thing that's wrapped up in our hormones,
Yeah.
or our fertility if we're younger, or, there's at every age there are challenges, but there's so much identity stuff wrapped up in, my skin is sagging, or, I can't get pregnant, or whatever it is. There's so much wrapped up in there that it needs to be explored, I think, as we age with our hormones.
And I think it's worse for women than men. I like, I can be gray but my wife can't. It's like she doesn't, it's just not the same. Men look distinguished, women look old, right? And I think that women get that a lot more than guys do. Guys can gain 20 pounds and have a belly, but gosh forbid, women do when they get around menopause, they freak out because they gain 10 pounds, or 20 pounds or whatever. And I think they just are harder on themselves,
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think it's changing. I'm taking this toxicity course, and I can't remember the stats. I'm probably saying this wrong, but I think it's like 1 in 7 men are dyeing their hair now. Something like that. Something was really shocking. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's higher than you think. And men are using more product. It came up because we think about women and using all these toxic products, but men are definitely on the rise in modern culture with using their own toxic products.
Well, yeah, we're becoming metrosexual, right?
Yeah. We can save that for another show. Okay. So this was really fun and great. Your book isn't coming out for a little while, but your quiz is coming out now, and you have your clinic, and you can see people from a distance at how we mentioned. So we'll share that link for the quiz. You want to share your site or any other resources you have?
Yeah, so the quiz will be whatsyourhormonetype.com. And like I said, probably in about 2 weeks, that'll be up and running. And then the new website that is going to be coming up with it is going to be called hormonehacktivist.com. So HACKTIVIST. So instead of activist, it's hacktivist. So hormonehacktivist.com. And that's going to have way more information on the different archetypes and the Shines protocol. And if you want more information on how to balance yourself, or even if you wanted to work with me one-on-one.
Okay. And that is live or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
That'll be at the end of the month.
We'll get, okay. We're recording this ahead of time, so we'll make sure to only share links.
Probably it should be up October 1st.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So it'll be all up by then. And yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Tassone. Any last thoughts to sum it all up?
I guess I would just say, like I always say, remember with hormones, don't let somebody tell you that your hormone levels are normal if you don't feel normal. Chances are you're probably right.
I 100% agree. I love it. Yeah, we kind of got into all this deep stuff, but we didn't get into the nitty gritty of hormone testing too deeply. But we'll just share that you definitely are an expert if someone wants to seek you out for that reason, either in Austin or online. So thanks again, Dr. Tassone.
Thanks.